this pitcher, Nix, is 23 years old. He's playing in the Arizona Fall League. Can you imagine what goes on in the locker room now after he's arrested for trying to sneak into somebody's house through a doggy door? I mean, who knows what was involved? You know, there could have been some drinking going on, could have been some edibles. Who knows what was involved? But he's trying to sneak through a doggy door. That's crazy.
Wow.
You know, I guarantee I would bet a year's salary, which is not very much, but I bet a year's salary that Bruce Feldman, who's on the line now, has never tried to sneak into somebody's house through a doggy door. Bruce?
You'd win that bet. Dan. No, I have not. I've done some dumb things in my day, but not that.
Bruce Feldman, who writes for The Athletic. He's a reporter for Fox, has the Audible podcast with Stu and Bruce. Out of those three things, Bruce, what do you garner the most joy from? Is it the podcast, is it the writing, or is it being at the games on the sideline?
It's being at the games on the sideline. I mean, I love all those other things, but, you know, they all kind of go together. But just to be, I mean, I love college football every bit, if not more, when I first started doing this. And just to be able to do that, you know, that's the best thing. It never gets old.
I love that. And, of course, you're in Eugene for Colorado and Oregon tonight on FS1. Is that correct?
Yes. 7 o'clock local time tonight should be fun. Autzen Stadium never disappoints.
All right. I want to ask you about that game in just a minute, but I want to run down some of the key games here between ranked teams. The Red River Showdown, can't call it the shootout anymore, noon on Fox. Oklahoma, Texas. Oklahoma coming in ranked 6. Texas is 11 at the Cotton Bowl. I know you've been on Texas since before the season started, but you like Oklahoma in this one, according to your most recent column. Has that changed?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, we had OU a couple of weeks ago. Was really impressed by how Jalen Hurts and that offense has been. Also, Texas' secondary, which got lit up by Joe Burrow and LSU week 2, they are really banged up. So not only were they really inexperienced, now they're really banged up on top of it. I think it's going to be hard for, as terrific as Sam Ehlinger is, I think it's going to be hard for them to keep up, you know, when as depleted as they are on defense right now.
Lincoln Riley is this quarterback savant. You know, he's the kind of the latest hot ticket item for really any NFL job that's going to be open, including the Redskins. They talk about Lincoln Riley. I mean, Baker Mayfield won the Heisman Trophy. He transferred in. Kyler Murray won the Heisman Trophy. He transferred in. Jalen Hurts is tracking any poll or anybody you talk to. He's one of the top 2 or 3 guys right now in terms of the running for the Heisman. What is it about Lincoln Riley that makes him so effective with these quarterbacks that he hasn't had for 4 years, that just kind of come in and have this immediate success?
Well, I think what he's really, really good at is he's a terrific feel for play calling. And I think people know he has air raid roots, but he is not doing a lot of the same air raid stuff. I think he's got some really good assistant coaches around him. Bill Bedenbaugh might be the best offensive line coach in college football. He's really good with the run game. And I think he and Lincoln are very creative. And I think, you know, a little bit like Sean Payton. I'm sorry, not just Sean Payton, Sean McVay with the Rams. You have guys who have a great perspective on who they're attacking and what might work. And I think his feel for that, and keeping it all relatively simple for his players to go play free, I think he's been able to do that. And look, let's not kid ourselves. Baker's super talented. Kyler's super talented. Jalen Hurts is really gifted. So, I mean, right now, this might be the best collection of receivers Oklahoma's ever had, or at least in this, you know, in this great run they've been on. So I think it all fits together really well, and you're seeing a team that's playing with a lot of confidence. And look, just I know the Redskin thing came up. I'd be really stunned if Lincoln Riley, who has probably works for the best AD in college sports right now, and Joe Castiglione, would leave that situation to go work for the kind of ownership that the Redskins have with Dan Snyder. I just don't see him making that kind of business decision at all.
Sometimes the grass isn't always greener. I would be surprised as well, but you never know. I don't know if it depends on money. I don't know if it depends on just his overall happiness there, but it looks like he's in a pretty good situation. You talk about the receivers at Oklahoma being good. I don't know that I've seen a receiving core as good as the one at Alabama in quite some time. I mean, Devontae Smith was just bananas against Ole Miss with 274 yards and 5 touchdowns. Number 1 ranked Alabama taking on Texas A&M. Does A&M have a shot, being that it's at home?
They have an outside shot. I mean, Kellen Mountain's a good quarterback, and Jimbo Fisher's certainly a really good coach. I just don't think they're good enough and ready on both sides of the ball in the line of scrimmage to handle Alabama and stay with them for 4 quarters. I mean, you're right. That is a great group of receivers Tua has. I mean, Jerry Jeudy's probably the most dynamic after the catch guy. They just have a ton of firepower. And, I just don't see them being able to hang with the Tide for 4 quarters. I think maybe a year from now, this matchup will be a little different because Tua and some of those receivers will be gone. I think Jimbo will be in year 3. But right now, I just think it's too much of an uphill climb for the Aggies.
So you talk about Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, all 5-star recruits coming out of high school. I was racking my brain trying to think of, just in the last, 10, 15 years, a better trio, in school. I came up with a couple of lists here. Okay, I want to run them by you. Ohio State in 06-07 had Santonio Holmes, Ted Ginn, Anthony Gonzalez, all first-round picks. Miami had Santana Moss and Reggie Wayne, and then Andre King, who was a 7th-round pick. And then LSU had the year where they had Michael Clayton, Devery Henderson, and Josh Reed. Is there another receiving core, in recent history that stands out to you that was as dynamic as this receiving core at Alabama right now?
Well, I would put the combination that Zach Mettenberger had at LSU just with Landry and Odell Beckham. It was a big drop-off for the next guy. There are guys who played in the NFL.
Yeah.
What's crazy is as good as this Alabama group is, I mean, also in the SEC West right now you have Justin Jefferson, who's been fantastic. He was a low 3-star guy who's blown up and been a great player for them. They have Jamar Chase, who's probably the breakout player in the SEC this year, and Terrace Marshall, who's hurt. But those guys, and Terrace Marshall will probably be back in a couple of weeks, those guys as a threesome in that offense, they rival that group. Clemson's loaded. I was thinking USC had a bunch when it was, and Marquise Lee has not been a great NFL player, but you look at had a great run. Robert Woods, they have had a run of really, really good receivers. But, you could throw what Clemson had.
Mm-hmm.
You've had some big super athletic receivers there. It's just hard to be honest. Sometimes these guys blur together where somebody was really, really great their last year, but probably a role player when the other guys were kind of rolling. It's just hard to I think, have them all going off at one time the way it seems like Alabama has with Tua right now.
Yeah, you bring up Clemson, Sammy Watkins, Martavis Bryant, Adam Humphries was there.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, of course.
Freak shows all over the place there.
It's unbelievable what they've done there. Let's visit the SEC for a minute here. The 8 o'clock game on Saturday night on ESPN is 7th-ranked Florida, undefeated, at LSU, also undefeated. 2 of 4 undefeated teams right now in the SEC. Florida, of course, coming off that win over then 7th-ranked Auburn. The Gator defense is pretty stout. They're going to have to deal with LSU's number 1 ranked scoring offense, averaging 54 points per game, though. Is LSU 2 touchdowns better than Florida? They're favored by 13.5 in this game.
I don't think they are. I think Florida's defense is really good. Now, here's why I think the experts have it this way. To me, there's 2 big factors that are at play. The first one is this game is at Tiger Stadium at night. Florida quarterbacks, Kyle Trask, very limited experience. This game is, last week they had Bo Nix, kind of a true freshman, not ready to handle the swamp and that defense. Well, now it's flipped, and you have an older quarterback, but no more experience than Kyle Trask. Now he's got to go into an equally hostile environment, probably maybe more, since it's a night game there. And I think that's the challenge. And the other factor is this kind of back end of a 1-2 punch, being they played a big physical opponent last week, the emotional rush to play Auburn. They were an underdog. They won the game. Now they got to play an even more talented team with a better offense, maybe not a better D-line, but a much better offense and probably equal personnel on defense, save for the defensive line part of it. And that game's on the road. It's at night. And when you look back, and I saw, this is something we talked about on the Audible this week, and I saw Chris Felica really from game day button it up with a pretty amazing stat. In the last 12 times a ranked team has played one of these had this dynamic, which is play a ranked team as an underdog and then beat them, and then you got to go on the road to play another ranked team. That team is 1-11 in those games. That's why it just does not bode well for Dan Mullen in Florida in this kind of situation.
I'm glad you brought that stat up. I saw that in your column. Very interesting stuff there. Joe Burrow, to me, has been one of the more fascinating players in college football. Loses the job basically to Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State, was a graduate transfer, goes to LSU, plays last year, was good, not great, but nobody in college football this season has made themselves more money than Joe Burrow. 22 touchdown passes already. Pro Football Focus has him rated as the best quarterback in college football. What do you see in Joe Burrow, and do you think that he could be the first quarterback taken?
I don't know on that end if he could be there's some other guys who are going to have probably bigger arms, but when you're looking at what he's doing, here's the stuff that I know the LSU staff pretty well, and they love his leadership, how competitive he is, and how smart he is. And the last piece of that is in terms of how he picked up. They had probably as big a coaching addition as anybody made this year, and it was a guy almost nobody knew about, Joe Brady, who was at the time, 29-year-old. He was an assistant with the Saints, but not even a position coach. And he had learned under Joel Moorhead at Penn State and then went to go work for Sean Payton. That guy is the pass game coordinator and the receivers coach, and he has changed everything in LSU. And it's all been for the better. And when you see them hitting the gas and having all these big passing days, it's because of what Joe Brady brought. Joe Burrow picked it up really, really well. I think it suits him very well. And now this will be a big test for them to play Florida in this defense. But right now, he's a legit Heisman candidate. This is different than any LSU we have seen in a long, long time. And he runs the system really well, and I think there's a lot of NFL concepts. I mean, he's a guy who probably was looked at like as a free agent prospect, and now I would not be surprised if he became a first-round pick somewhere in the first round just because of how well he's running the system.
It's funny how that works, isn't it? You mentioned Joe Brady, wide receiver coach. You know this, I'm sure. Last wide receiver coach to make a jump into the head coaching ranks and then, win a couple of national championships at Florida and Ohio State, one of your counterparts now at Fox.
That's right, yeah. I mean, he's younger than Urban Meyer. His hair's a lot redder, but he is a guy who if there's one guy who's generated a ton of buzz, I mean, we did a big story on him on The Athletic in the offseason. Ed Ogeron, the head coach, had told me, they've been raving about this guy. So when I went out there in the spring, and you have all this buzz around him inside the program. And I remember writing the story. What you'd get from a lot of people, a lot of readers and people on the internet would be like, oh, yeah, we've heard it before. LSU's changing the offense. I heard this 5 different times when Les Miles was there. But you know what? This time it has all been true. And I think you just watch the Texas game and you just see what's gone on there. And it's going to be fun to see what happens in Tiger Stadium. I'm still not sure they can beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and that's been the big hurdle for them. But so far, I mean, that guy has been a huge. Whatever he's getting paid, it is not enough in Baton Rouge for what he has done for that program.
Certainly, Ed Ogeron said he's been waiting to change this offense, and now he has the pieces in place. Bama, by the way, still has to play LSU and Auburn coming up. Bruce Feldman on the phone from Fox Sports and The Athletic. We were talking Florida and LSU. Joe Burrow, potential first-round draft pick quarterback for LSU now. You're calling, or you will be on the sideline for the Colorado-Oregon game tonight on FS1. Justin Herbert has been kind of the consensus first or second quarterback off the board for the last year or so, along with Tua. This guy has all the tools. I mean, he's 6'6", he has the arm, he has the intelligence. What have you seen, from Justin Herbert that could translate into the NFL?
Well, he's got a terrific arm. Like you said, he's very smart. He's also really athletic. I mean, he moves really well for being 240 pounds. I think that the two areas of question. Now, one, people are going to say, hey, how come they're not putting up even bigger numbers in the pass game? And I think one of the challenges for them is last week we had them against a Cal, and they got three of their best receivers back from injury who'd missed most of the year. And those guys are a little rusty. So let's see what happens now that there's some time to get those guys. Those are the three best weapons. The other part of it, which is a little bit of a wild card with Justin Herbert, is just his demeanor. I mean, he's a brilliant kid. He's a very nice, humble kid. I think there's some questions about just, I don't know if it's fair to say questions, but I guess just about how much of a commanding presence. He is not the rah-rah kind of personality. It doesn't mean he can't be a really good NFL quarterback and lead teams. I mean, there have been guys who have not had that kind of ultra alpha personality, but he's just it's just a little different in that regard. I mean, to be honest, Marcus Mariota had a similar demeanor, and I just think that sometimes because the guy has all the physical tools and there's no off-field character question marks, people are always going to find something to take issue with, and I suspect that will be the thing people will take issue with. And look, when you ask all the Oregon coaches and his teammates, the biggest thing they say is this guy has so much credibility with his teammates because they know how hard he works and how much he cares.
Same questions still to this day about Marcus Mariota. He called the Titans preseason games, and they still ask those questions about Marcus. Eli Manning had those questions coming out throughout his career. He won 2 Super Bowls. Bruce Feldman from The Athletic and Fox Sports, he's going to be on the sideline for the Colorado-Oregon game tonight on FS1. Bruce, also my neighbor in Manhattan Beach, thanks for coming on the show, Bruce. Much appreciated, my friend. I appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure to catch up with you, Dan. Thank you.
All right, talk to you soon. Have a good call on the game tonight. That's Bruce Feldman.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.